welcome into Week 8 Notes with Jesse Moeller, aka JMoeller05. What a Week 8 main slate we had today. We had numerous big names showing out, and let's dive right into them, shall we? The biggest one was the Cowboys, and they just stomped out the Bears, 49-29, led by Dak, Pollard, and Lamb. Dak was finally looking like his old self. You saw him scramble a little bit, taking off, which was nice to see for the economy aspect. Tony Pollard was the guy we've all been dreaming of. He was the RB5 this week, which I was telling everybody about. And what did he do? He absolutely balled out. He carried that offense, and he just dominated. We saw him finish out the game with a big 50-yard run. And it's his second career start without Zeke. And in both games, he's clipped 30 fantasy points. So you know when Pollard's in without Zeke, like, it's wheels up. If Zeke were to miss the rest of the season, Pollard would be a top 5 back in the NFL. And then we go to our personal favorite, Mr. Sedarian Lamb, a.k.a. CD Lamb. Yes, he is an alpha, and he is the Dynasty wide receiver 3. Yeah, that's right. I said alpha. I know we've been debating this nonstop for the past 2 years, but he's finally doing what we were hoping for, and it's all coming together. So I don't know why his price finally fell, but now that Dak's back, the efficiency goes up, and it's on like Donkey Kong for CD. So hopefully you got CD when the price was cheap. Like, I traded Pittman for him a few weeks ago, and I'm loving every second of what I am seeing from CD. So it's glorious to see. And yeah, you should have no concerns with this offense. They steamrolled the Bears. So that trio is going to lead them, and they looked like one of the best teams in the league. The next game, we just had Philly just run roughshod all over Pittsburgh, 35-13. Hurts and AJB were just an unstoppable duo. There were 3 just basically double covered touchdowns for AJB. One of them, the safety, was late getting over, but he just went Super Saiyan and had 39 fantasy points. It was wild in the sight to see. He abused the Pittsburgh secondary. It's basically when you're a freshman and you see the senior on the other side of the field and he's dominant. Yeah, that's what the Steelers were looking at. They couldn't stop him, no matter what they did. It was a sight to see today. As Pittsburgh aspect, it's kind of strange because you have Pickett and you have all this talent around him. You have Najee, you have Pickens, you have our boy DJ, you have Freiermuth, you have Claypool. Like, that's a ton of talent in one situation, right? But it kind of just feels TBD because we don't know what's going to happen with Pickett. And you're hoping he can finally take that step forward and be the guy. I know Pickens has the name cachet, but if you're really looking for someone that's discounted, it's Freiermuth. He had 7 targets today and 57 yards, and he has been the better fantasy tight end of the two between him and Pitts from last year's rookie draft. I don't know why he's really outside the top 8 dynasty tight ends. He shouldn't be. He's done everything you could ask for. He's continually earning targets and playing, so go get him if you can, because I know you'll be happy once you get him. But what these 2 games showcase is how just talented and head and shoulders above the rest the Cowboys and Eagles are. I would not be surprised at all to see those 2 teams battling it out in the NFC Championship later on this year. The next game we had was Miami in a shootout against Detroit. And let's be real, the Miami offense runs through Tyreek and Waddle. They put it up an absurd 20 catches, 294 yards, and 2 touchdowns today. They garnered 63% of the targets. Like, that's just mind-blowing stuff. You're lucky if you have an offense consolidating around 2 players at 50%. Them being at 63% today is just wild. That literally means there's no room for anyone else to succeed in the offense. Like, it's those 2. And then you have Mostert on the ground, and that's the entire attack. Like, Gesicki got in the zone and did his little, gritty dance, but it was those 2. Detroit, it was nice to see Swift back on the field. Amon-Ra was doing his thing, but the stars of the show were the Dolphins, just that trifecta. Tua is just a perfect distributor for those guys. He doesn't have to do much. He just has to get the ball and get out of his way, and that's what he did. So it's nice to see Tua knows, like, I don't have to go Justin Herbert mode and do everything myself. I just get them the ball, and they'll take care of the rest. The next game, we had Atlanta going to Carolina, and that was the shootout of all shootouts. And they took it down in overtime. And honestly, it was surprising. Atlanta even opened it up and passed a little bit. for 28 attempts, which is the second most they've done all year. And my goodness, we got a Kyle Pitts sighting. It was glorious. He had 5 receptions for 80 and a tug, and it was so nice to see. Of course, we'll still only 28 pass attempts, and Pitts seeing 9 targets. Like, that's a good chunk of the offense, right? It's over a quarter of it. There wasn't much left for anyone else. Mariota had a really good fantasy day. And on the flip side, our boy DJ Moore with his second highest yards of his career. He had 152 receiving yards today. He was a beast. Deonta Foreman, he got in the zone 3 times, so his stock skyrocketed. So if you started Foreman, probably you're loving life. But the highlight of the game was seeing Moore catch that Hail Mary at the end. That was just, I don't know what happened. Everybody gave up the play. But then Moore just took off, and he hit, and PJ Walker hit him in the zone. If not for Eddie Pinheiro, we're having a different conversation because he missed that extra point and a field goal in this game. And that missed extra point was right after the touchdown. That would have won the game for them. So, of course, what happens in overtime? They turn the ball over, and Atlanta finds a way to win. But congrats to you that either held or bought DJ Moore because he's the ultimate talent over situation player. And you're seeing it. Baker Mayfield was just absolutely trash. He was the worst quarterback in the league this year, and he just sunk the entire offense. Even CMC was depressed to the point where it wasn't traditional CMC. He was getting like 18 points per game when we've seen him pushing like 25 and even 28. But now that he's gone, the offense is really focusing on DJ Moore. So it's so nice to see that we get something productive. And it'll be an interesting backfield split with Hubbard and Foreman. Hubbard's probably still going to be the guy. I know Foreman looked pretty good today, but we saw all indications. Beginning of last week, Hubbard was a guy. I would expect the same thing. So it's going to be like a split committee for them. But, if you have either one of those guys, you can't really complain about it. But, yeah, it was actually a lot of fun to watch that game today. I was very surprised. I did not expect that. And who knows? Maybe Arthur Smith is, not being this old stubborn curmudgeon, a.k.a. the big donkey that we thought he was. So the offense has been really efficient for them all year. And if we're actually able to continue this passing trend, that gives us hope for Drake London and Kyle Pitts. I'll take just one of them succeeding each week. Maybe alternate, give us something because it's been a disaster. But, that was a great game. So DJ Moore's the big winner. And yeah, that's just great for Dynasty because he's an extreme talent. And if you can ever get a quarterback, that's what we've been saying for 5 years, a.k.a. Allen Robinson 2.0, you'll see what happens. The next matchup, we had the Patriots beating the Jets, and this was just basically 2 terrible quarterbacks today. Like, Mac Jones did what the Patriots asked him to do, not turn the ball over. And Zach Wilson is just... I saw Ian Hardit say Zach Wilson is, if Patrick Mahomes played football blackout drunk, it's the perfect explanation you could say for him. Just because he's a zoo out there. You see these passes and you literally ordered what he's doing, right? It's terrible. And he cost them the game with the 3 turnovers. There's just absolutely reckless, terrible ball. Whereas Mac Jones, he's way more. He takes care of the ball, and you can see that right away. The big winner, Romande and Jacoby. Romande had 7 receptions. That's great to see. That's killer in PPR. And Jacoby had 9 receptions for 60 to Tutty. It's so nice to see Jacoby get that touchdown. He's averaging over 15 points per game this year. And if this was last year, he averaged that throughout the year, he would be the wide receiver 13 on the year, a.k.a. what T. Higgins was last year. So King Kobe is strong this year, and we love to see every aspect of it. And it was nice to see Garrett Wilson actually show up. He had 115 yards today, and that was more than his previous 4 combined. So maybe Zach Wilson can figure it out and support those guys. But Carter was a little gimpy today, so kind of hurt him, and the running backs didn't really do much because of it. But there wasn't too much good stuff out of this game. So it was nice to see Garrett Wilson come back alive. And then Tyler Conklin, the surprise of the day. He's basically from the Game of Thrones where it's like, what is dead may never die. Like, you thought Tyler Conklin was dead, but he's really not. He's still surviving. And somehow he's just in there. But the takeaway, as always, I love Jacoby Myers. So if you can get him for a second-round pick and you need some production, go get him. Just send him the 2. And almost everybody's going to take it except contenders because he still doesn't hold value, even though he's just a target hog in that offense. And that's what we like to see. So wheels up for our boy Jacoby. The next game was one of the ugliest on the slate. New Orleans absolutely blanked Vegas 24-0. And it was the Alvin Kamara show. Let's be real. He put up 42 fantasy points, and it was no one else at 20. So it was Kamara, nobody else. The Raiders didn't even show up. They were like varsity blues when they went to the strip club and all night and tried to play the next day. Just hung over, looking disaster. I don't know what happened, but Carr, Jacobs, Adams, and Renfro put up a combined 12 fantasy points. It was a disaster. Yeah, sometimes you just got to throw away the tape because that's what this game looked like. There wasn't anything you could do. If you are looking for running back production, I know Kamara has a legal situation going on. You could send a late one for him if you're really looking to make a push for this year and deal with it and just let that production die in your roster because you know he's going to produce. He's already old enough to the point where the values decrease. He's significantly less than Eckler right now, where he's similar age, and he's been literally one of the greatest running backs of all time in fantasy. He's been RB1 every year. His career, that's not going anywhere. Like, you see what he does on the team. Like, Andy Dalton was like, oh, here you go, Kamara, just take it and go. And what did he do? He just had a monster game. Don't worry too much about Jacobs. Like, sometimes it happens. The game really got out of hand, and they kind of just canceled the script they were planning on going. So he wasn't as featured as he normally would be, but it's one game. I wouldn't worry too much about it. He's still a bell cow. He's still a top 12 back. Don't worry about it. Both these games, they have the key running backs. Sometimes game trips on you and it doesn't happen. The next game, we had the Vikings and the Cardinals go down, and it was a fantastic game. Minnesota came out 34-26 and is setting themselves up to possibly be the 1 seed this year, 6-1. Their division is trash. And the biggest takeaway is DeAndre Hopkins is officially back, folks. Hopkins just absolutely bodied everybody. He's the alpha he's always been. For those of us that faded him, that's over a little bit. We're looking kind of foolish. But like I said, he was going to be the 1A and the 1B with Hollywood. And that's definitely true. Too bad Hollywood's not around. So guess who succeeded? Rondale Moore. He's the number 2. So, when Hollywood comes back, this offense is going to be cooking with those 3. But in the meantime, you got D-Hop and that immediate production that it's weird. Like, his value is still depressed, so you could see what the price on him is. But he's absolutely crushing. He had 12 receptions, 159 yards and a touchdown. He dominated the offense. There was a ton of actually good fantasy production in this game. Dalvin Cook, Rondale Moore, they both found the end zone, so they crept over 20, but Jefferson and Thielen were productive as they always are. The only difference is they did not find the end zone. Jefferson put up like 9 for 89. Thielen, the secondary option, but he's still solid. Kirk Cousins, once again, getting over 20, no big deal. Captain Kirk, he's a cheap QB2 in Superflex where it doesn't take a lot to get him. I could have got him for the 203 in rookie draft this year, but I passed on it because freaking Johan Dotson fell to me and I got too excited. Big regret of mine, but you live and learn. Sometimes we get caught up in the moment, make mistakes. It's part of it. But his value is still cheap. Like, he's not going to cost you that much. And Kirk will do what he does every year, finishes his back in QB1 for the price of like QB2, 3. So, you know what I'm saying? It's not a bad investment. But the biggest winner is Kyler Murray because you're seeing the assets. You saw Hollywood at the beginning of this year. He was wide receiver 6. DeAndre Hopkins coming in, just absolutely balls out. And then you get little Mighty Mike Rondale Moore in the slot. That trio, those 3, like, Kyler's never had that at his disposal. He usually had one. He's had Hopkins, a dusty AJ Green. They've had Larry Fitzgerald in the past. Just, like, dudes that just really don't even belong in the league. Like, they're just bodies. So, and they're both all-time greats, like, but they're well past their primes when they were playing with Kyler, and it was very evident. I don't even understand why they brought freaking him back this year. It doesn't make any sense, but at least now they have Robbie Anderson too, so you could take some of that off of him, and then you have another option. So it's the wide receiver core is actually pretty deep now this year when Hopkins comes back. So if they do make the playoffs, they have a good shot, and they will be a very fun team, at least heading into next year. I know Hollywood, it's TBD on what he wants to do, but like those 3, that's a really good core to build around. And then, guess what? You have McBride, the rookie who hasn't played much this year. He comes in year 2, he's going to replace Ertz. And he's just a more explosive, better player probably. So, that's a win-win for Kyler. And I know he's finally starting to produce a little bit, but still go out and check on the price on Kyler. He should be viewed as a consensus top 5, top 6 dynasty quarterback. And he's a little bit, fallen because he's not rushing as much, whatever. He produces, and he continually produces. That's just what he does. He's a fantastic fantasy quarterback. Not the best real-life NFL quarterback, but guess what? We're playing fantasy. It does not matter. So go check on the price for him because if you can get him, well, you still can, and you get a discount on top 5 dynasty QB, do it. The only other guy that's like even in that category that's discounted, it's Watson. But you know all the situation. Some teams don't want to have him because of off the field and everything like that. And you still have to wait a few more weeks for Watson comes back. And I have a team that is anchored with those two, and I'm absolutely just yoked out of my mind to have those two just be the powerhouse and hopefully take us to the title. But the next game we get to is Tennessee and Houston, and it was ugly. 17-10. And realistically, Tennessee didn't even want to throw the ball today. Like, it was disgusting. It was the Derrick Henry show and nothing else. So my question for you would be, if the Texans play the Titans 17 times per year, how many yards and touchdowns do you think Derrick Henry would have? Is 2,500 yards and 20 touchdowns out of the question? Because realistically, I don't think it is. You know what he did today? Just a casual 32 attempts for 219 yards and 2 touchdowns. Like, it's incredible what that guy does. Even at his age, the pounding he's taking, the touches, it literally doesn't even matter. He just, like, it can't stop, won't stop. So, let me break this down for you to see how ridiculous he's been against Houston. In his last 4 games against Houston, he's averaging 30 attempts, 223 yards. So, what happens if you spread that out across the entire season? Say if you played Houston for the entire season based on his last 4 games against them, right? He would have 517 attempts on the year. Obviously not realistic, but this is just fun stats to play with. For 3,791 yards. He would blow the rushing record out by well over 1,500 yards. Like, it's incredible. Yeah, those that surprised anyone that Tennessee only passed it 10 times. Oh, yeah, it was Malik Willis' first start. He did literally nothing. They asked him to do nothing. I had someone ask me on Twitter, like, are you going to start Willis or Andy Dalton? And my thought process going into this is I did not anticipate Derrick Henry to go bonkers like he did today. And he said they had a passing bonus for if you have 15 attempts, you get a bonus. And I was like, he's like, is Willis going to pass 15 times? And I was like, oh, it's going to be questionable. I would guess yes, but I'm not 100% on it. Turns out I was well below that because he passed it 10 times. Because Henry was so good they didn't have to pass. So you know how Vrabel is. Like, why pass if you don't have to, right? So you just move it along, call it a day. But yeah, there was literally nothing else that you can really take away from this game. It was just ugly across the board. What we do know, actually, is that Davis Mills is not a quarterback of the future. So if you're stuck holding Davis Mills, just honestly, take a third. Move him for some backup running back. Like, find a way to get him off your roster because he's going to die on your roster. And I know people are pretty excited about him, but he's a day 3 quarterback. Like, you know, that's what happens with those guys. So if you get a chance with those guys, you'll see this over the years. Almost always sell them. Unless they have extreme Konami upside, someone like Jalen Hurts, then you can convince yourself because you're getting the boost in production for the now. But if you can't, do not hold those guys. Just move them because there's always a market for those guys in Superflex leagues. So if someone going into the year offering you a 2, boom, you take it and you run. Because guess what? That draft capital is not going to die in your roster. Davis Mills will die in your roster. It's a big difference. But the next game we're going to get into and break down is the Commanders' late break Taylor Heineke takedown of the Colts. I know he's not a good quarterback. No one's going to tell you he is. Even people who are fans of him believe he's not a good quarterback. What people love is the heart, and that's what he showed in the playoffs. And he showed it today. Like you saw, he was absolutely pumped after he took the lead late, and it's just like, it's a joy to watch guys like that. Because you know they're not that good, right? They're not going to be career studs. They're not going to play. They get these spurts where they get to play. And that's what happens with Wentz's injury. They bring in Heineke. And yeah, I'm kind of surprised they're actually going with Heineke, which is weird. But I guess they're still trying to contend for the playoffs soon because, you know, Rivera is always, it's weird. I don't really understand what he's doing because they do a lot of questionable stuff, but it's good to see. You know who's the biggest benefit? Mr. Antonio Gibson. He had 7 receptions today, and which is more than freaking McKissick. Like, that's huge, and that's a good thing to see. Oh, yeah, and by the way, he was a former wide receiver convert, so it makes sense, right? The highlight of the game, though, was McLaren absolutely mossing Stephon Gilmore. As the game went down to 1. It was really a highlight. He literally did a Randy Moss on him, and I watched it, my jaw dropped. I was like, oh my, I couldn't believe it. The takeaway for the Colts is it's a disaster this year, so don't count on production. Pittman's been their best player, and he will be because they're going to be in a lot of negative game scripts because Ellinger sucks, and they're going to be down a lot, so they're going to have to. But this just kills Taylor this year. Like, he's already been a bust, and he's going to be a bigger bust this year just because of the way the year's gone. And it's not going to get any better. So the only way Taylor's really going to succeed is if he's going to be basically Ken Walker, which it's very difficult to do what Ken Walker's doing because he's in a good offense and Taylor is not. Their line's falling apart, which was a big boost for Taylor, right? So this was always why when he was like Dynasty 101 this offseason, like you move those running backs all the time. This happens every year. You do it. There's rare opportunities, and this is coming up with B. John Robinson next year. He's going to be the 101, where you don't necessarily have to move him because you get the age. But Taylor's already going to 24. He's getting older for a running back. I know it doesn't seem very old, but it is old in running back terms. So you could have sold him for a fortune, and you could have pivoted to like Justin Jefferson, right, or Jamar Chase, or pivoted to one of those elite quarterbacks like Josh Allen. And that's such a safer asset. It's not so volatile. Like Taylor's he's going to keep disappointing. And like he's a very good talent. No one's disputing talent. I know there was a quote unquote generational. He's not a generational prospect. You know who's generational prospect? B. John Robinson, the guy that's like Saquon Barkley 2.0. That's the guy. And guess what? In PPR, that's the guy you want because he's going to catch a ton of passes, which Taylor will never do. Taylor was a monster last year. No one's going to dispute that. But the debate of like who's the 101 should have been, it should have been CMC. And it's showing out case why. Even in a situation with Carolina where it's awful around him, at least CMC was still giving you 18 points per game. Taylor this year has been, he was at like 11. And I know he's been hampered with injuries, but it's just not been a good year for Taylor. So you kind of have to ride him out. You can try and sell and see if you can pivot if that's someone wants to pay that top 5 price tag. But like, I don't know. That's why he was so high. But sometimes, he's a good enough player where if you hold long enough, like he's still going to produce for you. So the situation could change next year, but this year's it's not great. So if you're trying to contend, go flip him to somebody. If you are rebuilding, then I would flip him as well. It's basically like I don't see the benefit of having JT on your roster based on his value. Like realistically, you should be able to pivot to a similar price asset or even like combine them to pay up. You know what I'm saying? Do something where it's going to help you because that's what running backs should always do. Running backs should not be pieces of rebuilding unless they're injured like Breece Hall is this year, because then they don't hurt you with their points. Like there's no points coming off the roster. At least like JT's giving you points, but not a ton, but that hurts your max points for. So he's kind of just like but and it's the same thing with Pittman. He's kind of a beta and masquerading as an alpha, and everyone was like, "Oh my god, look, he's alpha." No, he's not. They were passing at an insanely high rate this year with Matt Ryan. And yeah, Pittman's like seeing decent target share, but his yards per route run is not good. It's like 37. It's not great. That's not alpha. Like that's not what you want. Like you want someone who, when he's on the field, he's seeing a ton of targets. And he's been on the field a lot, but his target's kind of iffy. It's not great. So yeah, he was really pushing in like those top 10 dynasty wide receivers, and that's when it's like a red flag. It's like, does this guy really belong in there? No, he does not. Like I was saying earlier, I flipped him because I knew the market was high on him, and the market was low on someone else I liked more. So, like I say, if the market likes somebody, for instance, we're going to talk about Travis Etienne, like, yeah, the market was super low on him, and look how it's turning out for him now. He's a top 5 dynasty running back. Like, you see how that works? Always invest in the guys you like, and particularly when winning is not a factor, because then it doesn't matter if they lose. And this is the DJ Moore case, right? But Pittman's going to be a very good wide receiver for a long time. No one's not saying that. It's just, was he worth, like, was the juice worth the squeeze for Pittman? And I don't think it was. And that's coming into fruition this year, which we had a lot of smart people talk about this year. Like, Peter Howard was the one that was, like, holding up the red flags, like, I don't think he's an alpha, guys. And I was, like, looking into it, and I was like, yeah, I think Peter's right. And that was where I was, like, I had a couple Pittman shares. I'm like, I'm going to try to move those. And I did. And I was very happy I did because it's worked out very well for him. But one of the later slate games, we had my hometown Seahawks just dominating the Giants, who showed that there are holes on that roster. I know they were great, but if we look at some of the advanced metrics, the Giants were not as good as their record stated, which made sense. They were closer to the Seahawks, but the Seahawks just outperformed them all over the place with a dominating 27-13 win. Geno Smith basically looking like Russell Wilson 2.0. So it's pretty weird how Russell leaves, Geno steps in. The efficiency really doesn't go anywhere. Like, they're not a pass-heavy group. I know they passed 34 times this week, which is a higher amount for them, but yeah, it's just pretty impressive. Like, you got to give it up to Pete Carroll and John Connor what they've done with that team, because they look a hell of a lot better than anybody thought. The craziest thing is DK Metcalf. Metcalf. He tore his patella last week, and somehow he's playing this week. So I don't understand what got missed in the way there. I just don't trust Pete Carroll with injuries. Because once again, like Metcalf should have been missing multiple weeks, and he's playing. So, and he was a beast this week. I benched him because I was worried about it. He killed me, and I was like, "Oh, it's the last time I trust Seahawks with their freaking injury reports." But yeah, Walker had an explosive play, but Metcalf and Lockett once again stole the show. Saquon didn't kill you today. He was disappointing, but he found the end zone, so still got like 15 points. It wasn't terrible, but going against the Seahawks defense, everyone expected a monster game. So from that perspective, yeah, he let you down. But, you know, the nice thing about Saquon, that's pretty much his floor. It's like 15 points. So you know what? You're like, he doesn't kill you. So it's not the worst thing in the world. But the rest of the Giants were just a disaster. Danny Dimes, nothing. But realistically, like takeaway, if you were in Superflex Dynasty, like go get Geno. He's dirt cheap. And it's looking more and more like he's going to lock up a contract, a.k.a. like we talked about a lot of times, the Ryan Tannehill contract. So go pay for him. Like I got him for the projected 203, and that's got some wiggle room. It's like 203 to like 206 is the wiggle room it has. I got him for one of my contenders. I needed a QB3. I had Matt Ryan on that team, and Matt Ryan's just ass. So I was happy to use that pick I had from a previous trade to go get Geno and lock in my QB2 slot for this year and possibly next year. He's still really cheap. I mean, you could go get Danny Dimes if you want. We kind of saw the issues he has today. He wasn't great, but he's in the same situation. He's going to be a little on QB1 because he has rushing upside. And yeah, it wasn't his best day, but if you want him, you can do. It's the same thing as Geno. You're basically hoping for them to lock him down for a cheap contract. And if the Giants continue to win, which it looks like they do, Danny Dimes is probably going to follow along that same track. So really, realistically, either one of them you can get for pretty cheap. I'm sure like an early 2, same thing for Danny Dimes. That would probably get it done. And you know what? Like they'll give you production and help you as a contender. The last game, and oh my goodness, the game. Woohoo, baby. San Francisco with CMC is literally Thanos with the Infinity Gauntlet getting the last stone, just putting it on. It's like, oh. Like you saw how incredible he was. They beat down LA, San Francisco, and Shanahan was not afraid to use him. He had 27 out of 33 running back opportunities. That's 81%. And he balled out with those tutties. 41 fantasy points. So if anybody's worried, you can just go ahead and shut it about that quote-unquote lack of ceiling because, it's very much there. The ceiling that wasn't there in Carolina is there in San Francisco. So, yeah, don't be skittish. It's too late now because we've seen it, but you probably could have gotten a discount on him. I've been Team CMC forever, so that was not me, but people were talking about that. But, like, where like it's going to be realistically like low teens is going to be his low performance. And if he gets touchdowns, he's going to be pushing into like high 20s. Like that's the kind of range each week he has. So FYI, he's a stud and he's going to produce. And yeah, Jimmy, the check down king, guess what? He checked down to freaking CMC, man. It was just so nice to see. Our boy Cup was a beast, 20 points again, no big deal. A-Rob even woke up, so he might not be dead yet. And the last guy who kind of showed out was Brandon Ayuk. I know Kittle had a touchdown, but he only had like 5 targets. He wasn't very much involved. Ayuk had 20 fantasy points. A lot of that was due to Debo being out this week. So if you want to take advantage of the perceived dip in Debo's value because CMC's in town, do it now before Debo comes back because you have 2 things working in your favor. You have the injury, which everybody thinks Debo's injury plagued because he's had a ton of them in his career. And also you have the perceived dip in his ceiling and his talent. So it's like the people are going to be like, well, he can't really do what he did before. Yes, he can. He's going to be the second option in this offense. It's going to be CMC and Debo. They're the 2 most unique players in the NFL. Debo can do stuff nobody else can. McCaffrey is a running back that's a wide receiver. He may not be the best either one of those, but the combination of the 2, no other running back can touch. And you saw how they used him. So it's like going to revolve around those 2. And then Kittle and Ayuk are going to be the ones that are hit or miss each week. And it's going to be hard to predict that. So they're going to be a little more cumbersome. And it's like, I'm much more skittish for those 2. And Kittle's still one of the better tight ends in the league. So the tight end position sucks. So it's not like you really want to get rid of Kittle, right? But Ayuk's like the wide receiver 3-ish. Maybe wide receiver 4 moving forward. Because I highly expect that to concentrate on those 2. And that's not me saying Ayuk's bad. He's a very good wide receiver. but Debo's a beast. Debo's unicorn. CMC's unicorn. It's going to revolve around those two. So if you can go get a piece of either one of those two, go do it. Debo's obviously a heck of a lot cheaper than CMC after today, but those are two. To basically wrap it up for our week 8 little rundown, we had 5 running backs bump up over 30 today. It's Kamara, CMC, Henry, Tony Pollard, and Dante Foreman. Congrats to the OSU that had Pollard and or Foreman on your roster because those guys killed it for you. And the wide receivers, we had 4 get over 30. AJB, D-Hop, Tyreek, and Waddle. Yeah, shocking. 2 Miami Dolphins, right? The wide receivers. Yeah, but thanks for checking in. That's the week 8 recap, and look forward to seeing you guys next week. Take care.